It is time for the Palmetto Bowl. It is hate week in the state of South Carolina. The Tigers, the Gamecocks, we all circle this one on our calendar every year. And after 11 games, we finally made it. So we're going to talk about the upcoming Palmetto Bowl, this next incarnation of the most heated rivalry between the South Carolina Gamecocks and the Clemson Tigers on this episode of Around the Paul. I'm Garrett Mitchell, and Griffin Barfield here as always. And we're joined tonight by our special guest, Q from the Welcome Home podcast. Q, welcome in. Good to have you, man.
Hey, good to be here, guys. Thank you, Griffin. Thank you, Garrett. This is at a great time, man. Being from Columbia, South Carolina, myself, Q, they call me Q Mac on Twitter. If you go on Twitter, it's the time, man. I can't stand Clemson, and I love this game. So therefore, I am glad to be here, man. Glad to be here.
All right. Well, I've got a question. All right. So they call you Q. So is that short for barbecue, as in barbecue chicken?
No. It's short for Q, as in the quality win we're gonna have against Clemson this week. Yeah, it's quality win. Q for quality win. Yeah. Just like 31-30 last year, same thing, quality, all around, man. Q for quality.
Hey, I was waiting for that.
Hey, nicely played. That's well played. All right. Hey, I got respect for that. Well done. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's jump right into it. Let's talk about this game, man. I'll tell you what. To me, it's one of the more interesting matchups in this rivalry that we've had in quite some time.
True.
You know, things had not gone well at all, for lack of any better way of saying it, for Clemson through the first 8 games of the year. 4-4, everybody writing the Tigers off for dead. And then here they come. They win 3 straight, 2 over top 20 ranked teams at the time, Notre Dame and North Carolina, just a shellacking of Georgia Tech. But then you've got the Gamecocks, who are also playing good football right now too. So this is a matchup, at least in my eye, of 2 teams that are really peaking at the end of the season. Q, we like to, give our guests the floor right off the top. So, what are you seeing out of South Carolina right now? It seems like a team that even at 5-6 is starting to find their stride.
Yeah. So if you think about it, Garrett and Griffin, some I talked to a lot of people about. Anthony, want to shout out Anthony as well, that is working behind the scenes on this. A really good friend of mine, met on Twitter. One thing about us, we had high expectations coming into the season. You brought back a lot of your main talent. We did lose a lot within Birch. Losing Bell was pivotal for us. We lost a lot of depth on the defensive line. But what we didn't expect this year, and I think even you guys can admit to this too, we didn't expect the offensive line to get shriveled like it did. Guys, we lost 7 offensive linemen that were scholarship players. We're talking game 1. We're walking into game 1. Our freshman Marquis Anderson, who was going to have major playing time, ends up redshirting for the year because he had to have surgery. And we find that out game 1 against North Carolina, who, by the way, I think both of us can agree Drake May's pretty overrated. I've seen him in person. You guys just got through seeing him. That's a pretty overrated guy. But they got us because you had lack of depth where we gave up 9 sacks. I think the closest we've had to that this year after that has been 5 or 6. But 9 sacks on an offensive line that's been so depleted. And this will be the 3rd straight week we started the same offensive line. And we're at the end of the year. So when you couple that with a lot of guys who you bring in a Nicholas Harbor, who I feel like, once again, had unfair expectations. He was a 5-star out of D.C., very highly rated player, but a lot of people remember he was highly rated for being a defensive end, not for being a wide receiver. He had the choice to make to be a wide receiver in college, and it's worked out okay, but he's a freshman. And so you have a lot of guys having to step up. Xavier Legette, who's had an amazing season. Spencer, who's actually had a pretty good season, better season than I thought he would. We did not see the Spencer of last year. We definitely saw the Spencer that showed up against you guys and showed up against Tennessee. But we just haven't had the results because we've had some very bad depth at defensive end that's hurt us on the defensive line. Defense has been a hindrance for us this year. And so we run into this game where, once again, you said it best, left for dead. We were left for dead, man. we couldn't close out against Florida, which we should have had that win. We up 10 with 7 minutes left. We should have won the game. You lose the Florida game, and that was a string of losing Florida, Missouri, Texas A&M. We had already lost Georgia, which was a closer game than people thought. We had already lost the North Carolina game. So at that point, we were, 2-6 and going into a 4-game home stretch. And then we ended up rattling off 3 straight wins. But all of us know it's hard for teams to win when they're on a losing streak. That is one of the toughest things, is to string along wins. And we were able to do that. And so now we're looking at 5-6 playing for our bowl lives in a sold-out stadium. In a sold-out stadium that is at night. And I think we all know what happens at night in Williams-Brice Stadium.
Well, I'm just glad that this game is back in prime time. It seems like it's been a while. But Griffin, I'll tell you what, really realistically, when you break this game down, there's a lot of very eerie parallels between the two teams this year. Q talks about the offensive line struggles for South Carolina. Well, man, don't we know that all too well? Really up until about the last 2 or 3 games, and they finally found something that started working for them a little bit better. But, it was just a total it was a train wreck up front for Clemson early in the season. And then, it's just 2 teams that struggled to find their way. Attrition, injuries, failure to close out games. Clemson missing a 29-yard field goal from straight down the pipe that would have beaten number 4 Florida State at home, losing to NC State by 1 score, going down to Miami, having the lead, having a 10-point lead with 8 minutes to go in the ball game. Same deal as the Gamecocks in Florida. Couldn't find a way to close that game out. And you sit here and you look at these 2 teams, and it's as cliche as it sounds. My goodness, both sides are just a few plays away from this being a top 10, top 15 matchup.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, when I looked at South Carolina, I had them as a fringe top 25 team, especially going from last year. Very, very great culture there. They're highly motivated. Shane Beamer has his team in a great spot when it comes to mindset. And I think you said it perfectly. I think that both these teams are coming in at the perfect time. South Carolina obviously strung 3 wins together. Their big win against Kentucky. It kind of just proves how good this team plays at home. And that's another thing when it comes to home field advantage. I think that it is the highest of the high. I think that could give South Carolina the edge, just because Clemson does not do well away. And I know that they have rattled 3 straight: Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, North Carolina, and they've been all statement wins. They've all been huge wins that have changed the program. The whole Dabo Swinney buy stock now. But I have friends that go to South Carolina, and they said playing at Williams-Brice Stadium at night is completely different than anything that anybody has ever experienced. And I know that we're from Death Valley. We have our own views, but nevertheless, it's just going to be a tough game. And no one knows how it's going to go when it comes to scores, when it comes to who's going to dominate, who's going to be the X factor. It's all up in the air, especially with the scenario that both these teams are given in. But it's going to be a great game no matter what, for sure.
I will say this, though, too, y'all. I do want to say this.
Yeah.
I went to Death Valley once. I think I was last year. You guys were playing Louisville. I was a shockingly loud stadium. I was the first time I had been there in quite some time. And I was like, man, I forgot how good that stadium gets, man. It gets loud in there. It gets really loud in there.
Yeah, it rocks for sure. And, back to the point, so does Williams-Brice Stadium. And I think, all hate and rivalry aside, any rational fan, it will admit that. But that's one thing, at least I think from our end, looking at things going into a primetime game in Columbia, is number one, the road record. Clemson has struggled on the road. Their only road win was at Syracuse. And then you've got Cade Klubnik at quarterback, who has improved, and he's doing a lot better. But I think a lot of that has coincided with going to more of a run-heavy scheme on offense and not forcing everything onto his shoulders, not letting him have to be the guy. And we've seen him make mistakes this year when he's had to shoulder the load. So that's one thing I think that probably should be a valid concern on Clemson's end, is how is Klubnik going to handle that atmosphere prime time at Williams-Brice Stadium? Because let's face it, Clemson's won one road game, and none of those atmospheres will be anything close to what he will see and what the Tigers are going to see on Saturday night.
For sure. And a lot of people, because I know this was big going on Twitter and how Klubnik has played, stadiums that haven't been as crazy as Williams-Brice. And some people related it to last year in Notre Dame. But this will be the most critical atmosphere. This will be the toughest atmosphere. And this could be the most degrading atmosphere for Klubnik in this whole offense. And that's why it's important for him to, string a couple passes together and limit the turnovers. That's going to be the biggest thing. The whole, even special teams as well. That's how Beamer ball, that's how, South Carolina began to find the edge last year. That was another big thing. So as long as the offense gets itself going early and Clemson is playing their game that we've seen the last 3 weeks, that run heavy offense, Klubnik throwing when he needs to and hitting his targets when he can, that's the way Clemson's going to win this game. And if the Williams-Brice crowd gets in the way, a trick play on Shane Beamer's part, that can completely change the game. So as long as Cade's playing his game, Clemson should have a great showing on offense.
No, I agree with that. I do honestly agree with that. That was my biggest advantage I feel like we have is can Cade play in that environment? Because you're going to have a rocking crowd that has strung on 3 straight wins. You have Spencer, who is very, very, very much having that confidence now. You have other guys that have stepped up, especially our tight ends. That was a major thing with Josh Simon stepping up, Trey Knox becoming more of a pass-catching tight end who has stepped up. You have to account for a lot of things. And Nicholas Harbor, because I think Griffin and Garrett, let's be realistic. No matter how you put this, Nicholas Harbor is 6'5", 240 pounds and runs a 4.3.
He's a matchup problem.
He is a complete matchup nightmare alongside of Xavier Legette, who runs, when he gets in open field, 22 miles per hour. So therefore, you have to think of that, and you have to take these kind of things into consideration. And I think that's where, to me personally, the rubber is going to meet the road. Does Spencer and them come out, bring the fireworks with them? Do we have that type of atmosphere where we can build off that? Does the atmosphere get to because Cade's going to have to make adjustments. And when he's coming up to the line and his offensive line can't hear, I think if anyone's been in Williams-Brice Stadium, the biggest thing we feed off of is when we know the quarterback is struggling to communicate with his offensive coordinator. The crowd just happens to continuously get louder and louder and louder. And how is Cade going to deal with that? Especially the first third down. The first third down you get into, Cade, that crowd's going to go crazy. And then if you get a sack on top of that third down, Cade, it's going to get louder and louder. Like I said, Saturday is going to come down to communication and execution. It's going to be nothing more, nothing less. It's communication and execution on both sides of the ball for both teams.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And, when I look at it from the Clemson side, and I think one area where I think could really be a tipping point in this ball game is how well the Clemson defensive front plays. Look, the bottom line is they're going to have to eat on Saturday night. And we're going to talk about that here in just a second. But speaking of eating, need to give a shout out to our sponsor, Arden's Burger Grill at 1280 18 Mile Road Central. And those guys, they serve up great food. They'll take care of all of your game day needs. So go see our friends at Arden's Burger Grill. Tell them the crew from Around the Paw sent you, and try their double dip wings. They're our favorites. They've got mouth-watering burgers, sizzling grills, great Asian food too. They've got the whole, it's the real deal. And they've got everything to satisfy every taste for your game day. So go check them out at 1280 18 Mile Road Central. But back to the Clemson defensive line. This is a unit, and when you look at the Tigers' struggles this year, the defense has not been the problem. You're talking about a unit that's top 5, top 6 nationally in total defense, and the defensive front has just been smothering at times when you've got guys across the front. True freshman Peter Woods was the number 5 overall recruit in the 23 class. You've got Justin Maskell, Tyler Davis, Ruka Rororo, Xavier Thomas, who's been in Orange forever. This is his 6th year. in the at linebackers, Barrett Carter, Jeremiah Trotter, who has just been on another planet recently. And you've got guys who can really wreak havoc. TJ Parker, true freshman, who quite honestly could be in the running for ACC Defensive Rookie of the Year. I mean, he's just been phenomenal. So to me, a tipping point in this game is how much pressure can the front seven of Clemson get on a South Carolina offensive line that Q, as you said, has, just like ours, has struggled this year. If they can get pressure, if they can get Spencer Rattler on the run, then, I think that could potentially cause some problems. And at that point, we'll have to see how Spencer can react to that, because I do think it's probably the best defensive front, or at least the top two defensive front that he's seen this year.
Hands down. That's hands down. Definitely top two defensive front we've seen this year. I would say I would put them above the Georgia defensive front. They really didn't get that much pressure on Spencer. And the only one I would put them behind is that Tennessee front. That Tennessee front was problems. That Tennessee front gave us problems all year. I think, like I said, North Carolina benefited off of us being the first game of the year and all that. I don't think it would have been the same how we played them later on in the season. But we knew going into this game that defensive front was going to be a problem. And we got depleted up front. And when you get depleted like that, it causes a lot of issues. And I do agree with that. And I think it's also the reversal. Our defensive front has improved so much over the year. I don't think a lot of people give them the credit they deserve. With the TJ Sanders, with Alex Huntley, with Tonka Hemingway, Jordan Strawn, Tyree Johnson, Desmond Umanzulu, those guys have come a long way and have stopped the run better. Because if you think about it, when we went into the Mississippi State game, their running back was the top running back in the SEC at the time in yards, 100%. They threw a lot on us. They threw for 400 on us, but they only ran for 27. Well, the goal of ours was to stop the run. Same thing with Kentucky this past game. That's what won us the game, was stopping the run, making Levis beat us. And so now you guys are hurt on that, unfortunately, on that receiver front with Collins out and Williams a game time decision, which possibly could be him out as well. Tyler Brown, phenomenal kid. I wanted him out of Greenville. I don't understand why he was so underrated. I genuinely don't understand it. Could not tell you to save my life, but I love the kid. The kid can flat out play. But Maffa and Shipley I don't understand why people don't understand that. That might be, if not the best, at least top three running back duos in the country. We're talking in the country. And so that's what we have to worry about, and that's what we have to deal with. And if your offensive line holds up like they have been these past few games, man, that's going to be a problem for us.
Yeah, and Griffin, what Q said, I agree with it 100%. I think Clemson's going to have to set the offense up off the run. To be successful, they're going to have to establish the run because, well, here we go again, and we've said it each of the last 3 years, attrition at wide receiver. We cannot keep a wide receiver core healthy to save our lives. And now you've got Bo Collins out. Antonio Williams probably doubtful for the game. Mm-hmm. Troy Stelato's going to play, but he's banged up. You got Tyler Brown, who's relatively healthy. He's put together a big season. Jake Brenningstool at tight end is still a matchup problem. But the options have dwindled at wide receiver. And, frankly, depth there worries me.
I think that, and especially inexperience as well, because I know in the depth chart, freshman receivers Ronan Hannafin and Noble Johnson are also on there now. And I don't know if you brought up Adam Randall, broken hand as well. You don't Adam really have many options.
Completely playing with
you don't have many options. Yeah, he played with a broken hand last week. Led the team in receiving yards, but that's huge. Establishing the run game early, because if you leave Cade with third down, 3rd and 10, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 8, he's not going to convert those, especially early on. At least I think that's Cade thrives in a run heavy offense. That's where he plays his best ball. That's where he's able to use his legs a lot more, throw on the run, hit receivers. But yeah, if this run game is not started on early, and South Carolina, this defensive line, that front seven, they're able to get to Shipley and Maffa, it could be a very, not only like a close game, close, low scoring game, that's a game that shifts into South Carolina's favor, because that's when you start getting the crowd into the game. That's when you start giving the offense momentum, the special teams, and it just keeps the defense on a mental high for the whole game.
Agreed. Because Debo Williams, our linebacker, he has over 100 tackles this year. He leads our team in 100 tackles. He's top 3 in the SEC in tackles. We haven't had that kind of linebacker play in a long time, you guys. It's been a long time since I can sit here and tell you guys a linebacker at South Carolina is leading the team in tackles. Usually our safeties. And so when you have Debo playing at the level he's playing at, which honestly, man, this kid might have made some money this year. And so you got to kind of look at it and think, what kind of momentum do you want to go into the offseason with? Because with that portal, with NIL, with everything that's going on currently right now in the state of college football, you have to start ending on high notes in order to go into your offseason. Losses in the offseason hurt. They hurt bad. Losses to your rivals hurt bad now. They hurt a little more than used to because of the uncertainty. Glad I think you guys' AD came out, which I'm so happy to hear, to say that we're going to continue the South Carolina and Clemson rivalry game. It's going to stay regardless of whatever is going on, which I was thankful to hear. I wish Ray Tanner would have came and did that, but I'm thankful to hear it. And so you got to have these kind of wins. And I agree, man. You're right. If you're able to get that, the name of the game is keeping that crowd into it. If you're able to keep Williams-Brice Stadium in the game, the entire game, it gets more and more dangerous for you guys. And that's the key. That's the key for us, is we gotta have our crowd into it, and we gotta honestly have you guys' defense out there longer than your offense. We gotta have it.
Well, I'm gonna throw another name out there. I've got to drop his name in here on defense for South Carolina, and we haven't talked about the respective secondaries yet, but we're about to get to that. But I've got to name drop my guy Marcellus Dial, man. I tell you what, I'm from Woodruff up here in Spartanburg County. I'm a Woodruff Wolverine to the core. Marcellus played for my school, my town, Woodruff High School. I watched that kid grow up from the time he was in our rec leagues. And after the game last year, I actually sent him a message a few hours after the game. I said, man, you broke my heart, kid. Why'd you have to do that? And we had a good laugh about it. But I've known Marcellus since he was a kid. Great guy. But he broke our hearts last year, but I had to chide him a little bit about that. But I tell you what, interesting matchup with the secondaries, because at times I think the South Carolina unit has had some struggles at times this year. And meanwhile, little did we know that the Clemson secondary was going to be a strength on this team this year. But man, they've balled out against some really good quarterbacks and receiving cores.
Yeah, and the story going into this, all over Twitter, these interviews, it's going to be the Nate Wiggins versus Xavier Legette one-on-one that's going to be followed. I think the whole game. I know you're waiting for it. I knew you wrote an article about that, and you can elaborate on that in a little bit. But yeah, I think that's the matchup of the game. And I know that's Spencer Rattler's favorite receiver. That's his best receiver, and he's exciting to watch. I've watched South Carolina games this whole year. He's always just a player I watch run routes and such. But yeah, I think that these secondaries are going to be the name of the game, because that's how both these teams are going to find success. And especially with Clemson on their side, if the run game's not working, Cade has to throw the ball more. How confident is he going to be? How many yards is he going to throw for? And Spencer Rattler does the same thing. If he has enough time, he will get a player on the money for sure. And it sucks that he transferred it to South Carolina last year, because I'm like, everyone thinks he was overrated at Oklahoma. I'm like, this dude is raw. He's good. And he proved it against us last week. But yeah, I think these secondaries are going to come in clutch no matter what for either side. You might see a game of defenses, and the secondary wins them the game on either side.
I agree with that. Another name I'll drop. I love Marcellus. I've met him a couple times. Very, very down to earth. Very even kill. He's a very even kill. Even kill. But when he steps between those lines, that's a different guy. And another one I want to name that a lot of people don't give the love to because they feel like he's had a sophomore slump, Nick Emenwari. Nick Emenwari has quietly had a very, very good year. And if you saw his interception against Kentucky, he showed you why he was a freshman All-American last year. And we're looking at having another one when I name drop Jalen Kilgore. That's a true freshman. That kid came in when Nick got hurt in the North Carolina game. He came in, led the team in tackles. You think about it in that retrospect, you have a guy that's a sophomore followed by a guy that's a true freshman, and you have to have them both on the field, and they're both game prepared and game ready. And I think our secondary has struggled this year with new pieces because you can't replace – it's hard to replace a Cam Smith. It's hard to replace a Darius Rush. And it's really, really hard to put all that pressure on Marcellus. And I think he took a lot of pressure at the beginning of the year. He struggled at the beginning of the year. A lot of pressure was on him. But once they started taking that pressure off and those guys started stepping up, you saw a different Marcellus Dow where they don't throw to his side often. You know, the guy that was a shutdown corner, he's dropped at least 3 or 4 picks this year that he knows he's had. You see it on his face. He's like, I should have had those. And now you have 2 confident groups. That was, I would say, I said this before, and I think I said it on our pod. That group getting confident was what Clemson didn't want. What they did against Kentucky was exactly the recipe Clemson didn't want to happen. Because what you have now is a secondary group that literally was the reason why we won the game. The offense did terrible. That was a terrible game plan by Loggins. It was a terrible showing by the offense, but we still won the game. And that tells you that defense has finally gotten that confidence. And so just like you said, Griffin, this may be that low-scoring game because I could also see that. It could go both ways. I could see it going both ways. And if it's a low-scoring defensive game, it's going to be who wants it more. It's going to be the defense that wants it more. That's what it's going to come down to, the defense that wants it more.
Right. And, you know, going back and talking conversely about the Clemson secondary, and it's, to me, I think it's the deepest. It's the deepest position group on the roster for Clemson. And you've got upperclassmen, Nate Wiggins, who, I mean, if you go back to last year, he had a disastrous start to last season, and it just got better and better. And now he's, by all accounts, by pretty much every analyst sees him as a first-round draft pick.
A dog.
Last week against North Carolina. That kid made a lot of money last week against North Carolina. Then you've got Andrew Makuba, who's a 3-year starter, can play safety and corner. You've got Sheridan Jones. But then you've had some injuries in the secondary. Wiggins dealt with injuries a little bit, didn't miss much time. Sheridan Jones missed a few games. Makuba was banged up earlier in the year. And you started to see a quartet of true freshmen get a lot of time at corner, led by Khalil Barnes, a true freshman who is now, I mean, he's an undisputed starter. I mean, he's been phenomenal. You've got Avion Terrell, younger brother of A.J. Terrell, who was an all-ACC corner at Clemson, was on the last national championship team. Kylon Griffin, Shelton Lewis. Go to back to the Georgia Tech game, 4 interceptions. She intercepted Haynes King 4 times. All 4 picks were by true freshmen. And so when you add that to those upperclassmen like Wiggins, Jones, and Makuba, it's a deep and it's a dangerous unit.
Yeah, I think it's a perfect melting pot for defensive success because Clemson are losing plenty of guys, whether it be just graduating, running out of eligibility, or going to the NFL draft. And it's perfect because you have guys like TJ Parker, like your Peter Woods, and like that quartet of freshmen. I'm really high on Khalil Barnes. I knew he was going to be a star coming out. He had a great showing in the spring game, and here he is now being the starting safety linebacker wherever Wes Goodwin wants to put him.
We're talking about this Clemson secondary and what a deep and talented unit they are. And just how much of an effect they can have on this game Saturday. I think that's, again, it's a unit that it's prudent to Clemson's success defensively.
Yeah, and what I like about it, too, is, you know, it's an embarrassment of riches, and you have plenty of depth to switch one in with the other. I like I said before, I think it's the perfect melting pot of experience because you have old guys, Nate Wiggins, Andrew Makuba, Tyler Venables. I know that he hasn't really gotten much field time, but he's just been a veteran leader compared to with guys, like you said, that quartet, Khalil Barnes, Avion Terrell, Shelton Lewis. Those guys just are, I mean, the better way to put it, they're all dogs. And I think they could come huge. They have been true X factors, especially in that Georgia Tech game, but North Carolina, they made some big plays as well. So don't be surprised if, the biggest play is going to happen by a Clemson freshman if the Clemson defense does prevail and help them win this game.
I like that. I mean, I like Nate Wiggins. Terrell showed me a lot this year. Makuba has always been a guy I thought was strong. So I agree. Y'all secondary really showed me a lot, especially a lot of the games I've watched. The secondary definitely came along as the year came along. They definitely improved a lot. And so I love the depth that you guys have built as well. I'm like I said, I'm a diehard fan through and through, and I have big connections to the team, but I'm also a realist, and I know, reality of it is guys are very deep at that position, and you guys are going to be good for years to come. And that's, when you feel strong about your secondary, I don't know, it's something about when your secondary is strong, your team starts to trickle into a very good effect. And so that's why I'm glad, Beamer and them are doing the same with Nick and Warrior and all them and trickling to it. But like I said, man, this is going to be the battle of the wheels. This is going to be the battle of who wants this more on Saturday, man. Who wants it more on Saturday? And I'm looking forward to seeing this, man. I promise you I am. It's been one of the more exciting ones I've been waiting on for years. It's been years.
Yeah. It's going to be a phenomenal game. Q, I agree with you 100%. Now, we're kind of coming down the home stretch here on this episode. So, what would a good Palmetto Bowl be? What would a great Clemson South Carolina rivalry game be without a little bulletin board material and message board fodder and everything else? So we've been talking about the secondaries. Xavier Legette certainly raised some eyebrows with a statement he made. We're just talking about Nate Wiggins. Well, we all know who Nate Wiggins is. Apparently, Xavier Legette does not.
Man, I knew y'all would take that bulletin board. I was waiting on it. I was just waiting on it. Xavier knows who he is, man. Xavier knows who he is. But one thing about Xavier, as a guy, he's a guy from Mullins, very country guy. He's not gonna give nobody no credit. He's not gonna do none of that. He said, just line the ball up, let's play ball. That's really what he was going at. He thinks Nate's a great competitor. Nate's actually gonna be one of the better corners he's played this year. So he's ready for him. But hey, if y'all need that bulletin board, it's fine, because I promise you, what Xavier feels that you guys have given a lot of credit to Juice because of what Juice did last year. But y'all forget how good he is. And now that he's been the focal point, he's ready to prove it against Clemson, because that's a game he's wanted. Because of how his recruitment went and how Clemson never gave him the offer, he wants this game bad. And he wants to have the same showing he's had in another one. So, trust me, there's bulletin board material everywhere. Everywhere. Bulletin board material everywhere. And I love it. I love it.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, being from Mullins, the Mullins auctioneers down there in the lower part of the state, those Auks down there, man, they, like you said, their country is all get out, but you do have some ballers and some good athletes come out of there. And he certainly is one of the better ones to come out of Mullins in some time.
Yeah.
But Griffin, what do you think about it, man? It's, again, like I said, this rivalry, you've got to have something from one side or the other to stir the pot a little bit. And sometimes it's been Clemson or Dabo that's fired the shot over the bow, and this time it just happened to be Legette. But it wouldn't be complete if you didn't have something like this.
Oh, not at all. It simply raises the stakes, and this game's a perfect example of Clemson, who is a top 25 team. Very well could lose this game. South Carolina, other way around. They could very well get blown out in this game. It comes to the point where you really have no clue what's going to happen in this game, and it just raises the stakes. It gets people to watch it more. It gets people to watch that matchup, because for Nate Wiggins, for not knowing their top guy, not knowing who he is, take note. Ain't right back. That type thing. Same thing with Legette. It just raises the stakes, and it gets people talking about it. It gets people looking at it when game time hits, when that ball is kicked off at 7:30 at Williams-Brice Stadium. So it's just all in the build-up, and I'm all here for it. I love stuff like this, especially on rivalry week when There's always stuff going on. You were just waiting for something to happen.
Always. Love it.
Well, hey, we've talked about it. We've broken it down, players, position groups, matchups, and hey, we're almost 48 hours away now. It's about time to play the game, and it's about time for us to give some predictions. How's this one going to play out? And Q, you're our guest, so man, the floor is yours. The way you look at it, how's this one going? We know who you're going to pick, but how's this one going to shake out?
There will never be a day we could literally be coached by Will Muschamp, and I will still pick us to win the game, knowing good and well I'm walking to a stadium where we're going to lose. The keys to the matchup for me this week is establishing our run game with Mario Anderson, who's been a back that has emerged, and our offensive line showing up, and our defense taking this personal and taking this serious and stopping the run. If those things can happen, I believe at the end of the day, we can get this. Maybe, honestly, I'm going to go 24-23 us. Late field goal win. Well,
if it comes down to a field goal, then you've got the advantage. I can tell you that much.
There you go. Shout out to Miss Jeter.
I take it low scoring, and I'm not saying that defense is going to win this game. Maybe defense wins the last drive, but you're going to see turnovers on both sides. I think that's the key to the game for Clemson. You got to limit the turnovers, especially early. You can't let South Carolina run away with this game, and when they're up, they turn the ball over. You can't let them get that comeback like they did last year. Second thing, I think you got to pressure Spencer Rattler, and his best success is when he's in the pocket, when he has plenty of space, looking for a guy like Leggett. That's what you're going to get in a guy like him. And Spencer Rattler could be an NFL draft pick. I know he has a year of eligibility. He can return next year, which obviously would be a knife in the heart to me. But with that being said, I think defense does prevail. I think it does on Clemson's side. I'd say low scoring. Give me 24-20. Clemson wins.
Well, you know what? A lot of times I like to be the one that goes a different route and will go a different way with my prediction than the others. But I actually agree. I agree with UQ and Griffin. I think I could see it being a low-scoring game as well. A lot of ways, much like the game South Carolina had with Kentucky last week, 17-14 being the final. Now, I certainly think Clemson's a little bit more fluent in a lot of what they do than Kentucky is. But with that said, I agree. You have to limit the turnovers. Clemson has lost every single game this year in which they have lost the turnover margin. When they win the turnover margin, they win games, and it's just that simple. They've won the turnover margin against Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, North Carolina. They've won. So I think the defense finds a way to force a couple of turnovers. I do think you see an interception, be it Wiggins or one of the true freshmen. I think it can be caused by the defensive front. You get Spencer Rattler running on a play. I think maybe he throws a bad pass and one gets picked off. And if you can generate a couple of turnovers, if you can limit turnovers on the offensive side for the Tigers, then I think you put yourself in a good position. But very similar to the scores that you guys predicted, I'm going low scoring as well. Clemson 24, South Carolina 17.
I love it.
All went the same route, I see.
I'm telling you, man. It's just something about that. I think it's going to be around that area.
Low scoring.
Well, guys, I tell you what, it's going to be a lot of fun. Prime time under the lights at Williams-Brice Stadium. My personal opinion, and like my boss at work likes to say, my opinion, that and 50 cents will get you a cup of coffee. So it doesn't mean too much in the long run, but this game should be played under the lights in prime time every year because, look, at least here in the Palmetto State, it's the center of our universe the Saturday after Thanksgiving.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It's the dessert.
Always.
No doubt. Eat lots of turkey and dressing and all the good stuff. And then you come back 2 days later, strap it up, Tigers, Gamecocks. It doesn't get any better. Well, Q, man, hey, so good to have you on here. We appreciate the jokes, but the serious talk about the game as well. And that's what, we love to do it. And getting the outside perspective, it's always a good thing when you can put two sides to the game and get a fresh look at it.
For sure. You guys have been great, man. Like I said, man, rivalry aside, this has been fantastic, dude. You guys are great guys. I genuinely can't wait to chop it up with you guys again, man. This has been great. This has been great, dude. This has definitely been great. Thank you guys for having me on.
Yeah, no doubt. Check Q out on the Welcome Home podcast, and you're on Twitter as well, right?
Yes, sir. Hey, just look up QMac and you'll find me.
Hey, sounds good. And again, we're for any South Carolina fans watching, we're around the Paul. You can also follow us on Twitter at CU Sports Media. And of course, we'll have everything from the Clemson side. QMac, he'll have everything from South Carolina side over on his feed. But lots of good information going either way. So check him out as well. And that's going to do it for us on this episode of Around the Paul. It's almost game time. Palmetto Bowl. We've made it 11 weeks. Now it's time for week 12. And it's as far as we're concerned, it's the biggest one of all. So may the best team win. Until next time, this is Garrett Mitchell, Griffin Barfield, and we've got Q Mac from Welcome Home podcast. Griffin and I are going to say go Tigers. We know Q's going to say go Gamecocks.
Go Gamecocks, baby.
Hey, we'll see y'all when the lights turn on at Williams-Brice Stadium on Saturday night. Good night, everybody.
Go Tigers.
Yes, sir.